Hey, what is going on, guys and girls? This is James from Twintendo Gaming, and today I'm going to be talking about the future of Pokemon, what the next games are going to be. This is just all speculation, and I've kind of got a few points and stuff I want to talk about. So we should be expecting probably a new Pokemon game announced soon, because there isn't really anything announced for what's coming out this year. And I've checked the list of Pokemon games for years, and they normally have 5 games per year, and that can be obviously spin-off stuff and Pokédex 3D, anything really, but we've got really nothing coming out as far as I'm aware, so expect something probably next month, or maybe even this month if we're lucky. But I'm going to talk about first Pokémon Z. I'll move on to Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire remakes after. If you haven't seen my original video on Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire remakes, maybe a few hints of if that they're coming out. I'll put that on screen now, just for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever. And if you haven't seen it, then feel free to click on it and then come back to this video. If you have seen it, and I'm probably going to put an annotation on the original one linking it to this video. And if you just want to watch this video, just ignore this bit now. But anyway, let's jump into Pokemon Z, or whatever it's going to be called, X and Y 2, you never know. So let's just start with the basics of Pokemon games. Each generation has its own spin-off from the original games. So first gen you have Yellow, second gen you got Crystal, and then Emerald, Platinum, and then it goes to Black and White 2, which is the interesting one because it breaks against the norm. So I looked at the release dates from the original games, Red and Blue, and then the years between, the spin-off ones like Yellow and Crystal, and so the games come out 1 to 2 years after the first of the original ones. It's probably going to be 2 years, I think, for Pokemon Z. So you've got to think, well, what are they going to fill with that time? And I'm thinking that'll be Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, since they missed a 10-year wait. But I'll move on to that later. So, like I was saying, because the Pokemon franchise, as we know, it's got bigger and bigger every year, probably. That means they get more games per year, more developers and money pretty much, built into Pokemon. Let's see, what else have I got to say? Okay, so with the main games, which I'm going to include remakes with this, so no spin-off games I'm talking about, they come out 1 to 2 years between each other. So it depends where obviously where you're from when you get the game. So obviously Japan get the game first normally, except for X and Y this time. But say let me think. So with Crystal, that came out, I think it was 2000, or was it 2001? It might be 2001. Yeah, it was 2001, I think. And they got Ruby and Sapphire in 2002, so that's a year after. But there's some games they got Diamond and Pearl 2006 Japan, and then Platinum came out 2008, so it's a 2-year gap. So it depends obviously what game it is and where you're from. So with Europe it's normally 2 years. It's rare that it's a year. But like I was saying, X and Y have had the worldwide release dates are simultaneously released around the world. So will future games be released like that, or is it just a one-off? So we'll find out probably. I think if there's another worldwide release for the next main Pokemon game, then I'm going to assume that they're going to be doing that for every main Pokemon game from now on. And that'll be good though, because I don't really like waiting 6 months for a Pokemon game when I know it's out in Japan, but you can't really do much about it. But okay, so we'll talk about the last main game. Not talking about X and Y though. That was Black and White 2. And that was a year before, that was a year ago, before X and Y. So we had to wait a year between the main game, the spin-off game from Black and White to a new main game. So we might have to wait 2 years for another main game, because even though Pokemon's got bigger, I've checked the timeline, and it's mainly 2 years that we have to wait. But you never know. There might be a big game released this year, a remake, which I'm hoping for. Let's see, what else have I got to say. Right, so I'm going to talk about the remakes now. So Fire Red and Leaf Green came out a year after Ruby and Sapphire. So I think Ruby and Sapphire was released in Europe 2003, and then we got Fire Red, Leaf Green 2004. But the thing is with Heart Gold, that came out 3 years after Diamond. So if we look at, you get a remake on a new console. So you've got Fire Red and Leaf Green on GBA, then moves up to console DS. They released the main game, which is Diamond and Pearl, and then they released Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But that came out 3 years, so it's hard to tell when the Ruby and Sapphire remake will be made, although it's been like 3 years already since the 3DS came out. But then again, it's only been less than a year since X and Y came out. So let me see. Right, the 10th anniversary is past for Ruby and Sapphire, and I know a lot of people are saying, then there's no hope for the game, if it's not out by then. But then again, I was thinking, well, Fire Red and Leaf Green, that came out 8 years after the original, and Heart Gold came out 10 years after. So there is a chance that'll come out still. I mean, I don't think they're trying to do it in an anniversary style. I just think, I'll explain why I think it's been delayed in a sec. But yeah, I think it's been delayed due to the 3DS, and I'll explain why later on in the video. But yeah, since obviously Ruby and Sapphire hasn't come out yet, there is a chance that the next Pokemon spin-off of X and Y will come out next, which could be obviously Pokémon Z or X and Y or whatever, X and Y 2, sorry, or whatever they want to call it. But things I want to talk about with this kind of the third game in the 6th gen series. Obviously we got 70 Pokemon in this Pokedex, and a lot of people were disappointed in that, and I was as well. I mean, you can understand it. There was 2 years difference between 5th gen and 6th gen, even though I think they probably have 2 teams working on it, on them both at the same time, because they want to get a 3DS game as quick as possible out. But obviously, because they weren't ready with the 3DS at the time, 4 years had passed since a main new generation, they had to get another generation out. So yeah, they made that decision. But what I think, this is a rumour and a possibility, but the third 6th gen game will have a new Pokedex entirely, but it'll still be classed as 6th gen Pokemon. So if you remember, obviously, if you haven't played Pokemon X and Y, this is kind of a little spoiler. It's not a major one, but if you have played it, anyway, there was 3,000 years ago from the time you're actually playing, there was a war, big battle. I think a lot of Pokemon were killed and wiped out, and kind of brushed over that bit. But yeah, so we obviously normally get 100 Pokemon per Pokedex in new gens. So I was thinking maybe Pokemon had gone extinct or migrated from Kalos that were in the war, and so for the third game in 6th gen, we'll be going to a new region with kind of new Pokemon, but maybe classed as 6th gen. I don't know. And there are a few little maybe possibilities of this, kind of hints at it. So if you remember the backpacker who gives you the strange souvenir, which I will talk about after this bit, he mentions I think it's this guy anyway, but I'm sure it is. He mentions a brand new facility or something in his region, and I'm thinking, well, obviously, it could be anything. I'm just speculating, but maybe it's something that brings Pokemon back to life or something, kind of like the fossil system in the past Pokemon games. I don't know. Obviously, like I'm saying, I'm just it's speculation. But remember the strange souvenir. If you haven't got that, it's a very weird item. It's not even a key item, which I find weird. It says it depicts a Pokemon. It doesn't look like any we know, let's be honest. So maybe it hints at kind of a new Pokemon in an upcoming game. And I really don't think, we'd have to wait long for it. A year or 2 max. It might just be for a Pokemon we know about, and it's just... But I really don't think so. So yeah, like I said, it could be hinting at new Pokemon in an upcoming game. And an interesting thing is, if you use websites like PokeBeach, which I did when X and Y was coming out, before X and Y came out, there was one source who kind of gave a lot of true information, all these types and weaknesses of Fairy, new Pokemon, all that stuff. And the person mentioned new Pokemon that weren't actually released in X and Y. So obviously, this is just you can decide if you think it's true or not. I'm not saying, I'm kind of sitting on the fence. I don't know if the person was lying, but they mentioned other Pokemon, but they weren't put into X and Y. So is it possible that the ones they saw would be saved for the third 6th gen game? So there was Pokemon mentioned Trusk, which is I think it was a grass ball, which sounds really cool. I was looking forward to that. A bit gutted when it wasn't in the game. So, you don't know whether they're lying, which is annoying, or you don't know if they're actually going to be placed into, say, Pokémon Z or XY2 or whatever you want to call it. And I know a lot of you will be thinking, well, wouldn't we know about them already? Wouldn't they be in the code? And that's a good point. But the only new Pokemon we do know about that are in the code is the Mega Latios and Latias. But, when we had that Lumiose massive glitch that kind of breaks the game, Pokemon, they released a patch and sorted it out. So it's possible that they could release a patch to code these new Pokemon in the game once, like, say, Pokemon Z or X and Y2 comes out, and you can trade them over. Once it's patched, you can send them over. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's kind of... It's hard to say, if that'll happen or not. It'll be very cool if there's new Pokemon, because 70 Pokemon didn't feel like enough for me. Especially, there's barely any legendaries, and even with the event legendaries, there's barely any compared to, say, Diamond and Pearl had like 16, I think I counted once. So yeah, disappointed in that, but there's nothing we can do, really. But yeah, that's all I kind of want to talk about for Pokemon Z. So we'll move on to Ruby and Sapphire remakes. Like I said, I made a previous video, but I'll just start with the basics, pretty much. Okay, so the original game was released in 2002 in Japan, and we got it in Europe, USA, Australia in 2003. So it's almost been 12 years since the original game came out in Japan, because obviously 2014 now. But Fire Red, like I said, was released 8 years after the original, so I'm not sure if there is a timeline with it, because Heart Gold came out 10 years. Is it possible Ruby and Sapphire will come out 12 years? So 2-year increase on each of the remakes? I'm going to say that's really doubtful, because we'll need it to come out this year. And it'd have to be announced probably next month, and then come out December time in 2014. But a lot of people have been saying on my previous video, I never mentioned it at the time, but Mega Latios and Latias may be a hint in the remake. That's a cool idea, I think. I will just... I think it would be so stupid if Nintendo didn't make a remake, because it's the second best-selling Pokemon game of all time, and obviously, I'm not saying it's the best. It's my favourite, but I know it had so many flaws, that game. No time system, so it's always daytime. Very short and kind of easy, a lot of people said. I kind of agree with that. Even though I loved it, I'm not going to bash it. It's still my favourite game of all time, but I can understand why a lot of people don't like it compared to the others. But anyway, like I was saying, it's the second best-selling, with 16 million copies sold, over 16 million, sorry, and Diamond and Pearl is first with 17 million, and obviously that's because, the GBA and the DS were very popular consoles, and obviously Pokemon grew as a franchise, so I'm not saying... I mean, if Red and Blue and Green or whatever, that came out, say, on a GBA first, or the DS, that was the first Pokemon game, then... it might have been the best selling. I'm not saying because it's old it's not that good, because I know it's amazing, even though I've never really had a chance to play it as a kid. Ruby and Sapphire was my first Pokemon game, even though I did know about Pokemon for a long, long time. It took me a while to get into it. But anyway, I'm just going to explain why I think Ruby and Sapphire has been delayed. So, obviously, there's a main Pokemon game released every 4 years, as in a new generation game. So you got obviously Gen 1, I think that was 96 in Japan. Yeah, I'll do it in Japan kind of order. No, it might be 95. Anyway, pretty much, as you know, there's 4 years between each game. So with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, we got that in 2003, got Diamond in 2007. So I was thinking, obviously we got, let's think. You had 4 years from Diamond and Pearl, is obviously 2011, and the 3DS came out, I think it came out 2011, and so obviously Pokemon wasn't ready for 3DS at the time because it only just come out. So Nintendo had the option of either, for the first time, delaying a Pokemon new generation for more than 4 years, or they could just release one on the DS, which eventually they did with Black and White. So while they're making the 3DS game, which actually came out 2 years after, as we know now, obviously that would delay Ruby and Sapphire back, because they don't want to release that on the DS. They want to release, a new remake on their new system, like they've always done. You know, Fire Red GBA, Heart Gold DS, and you know, obviously Ruby and Sapphire, hopefully 3DS. So basically, to make these remakes, they have to make the new kind of generation game first, and then build off the engine of the old one. So like Ruby and Sapphire came out, then they built the game off Ruby and Sapphire engine for Fire Red. You know, Diamond and Pearl came out, used the same engine for Heart Gold, Soul Silver. So now that Pokemon X has come out, will they build, you know, Ruby and Sapphire off that engine? I'm really hoping they will. That's pretty much why I think it's delayed, because obviously 3DS came out a bit late, and obviously they couldn't really skip Pokemon generation, so they kind of made two quick ones. I'm not saying they're bad, they're quite good. I didn't really like Black and White, but 6th Gen was good. You know, X and Y was good, it was good fun. But yeah, it feels like, obviously, with 70 Pokemon, it's kind of missing something. And obviously, I'm hoping that Ruby and Sapphire just gets moved, you know, will either be announced, hopefully this year, because, you know, the third kind of spin-off games come out every 2 years. So like, you know, so as I was saying, like Emerald and, you know, Crystal and all that, they come out 2 years after the original. So I would like to see Ruby and Sapphire announced this year instead of waiting another 2 years for it. But, you know, let me know what you guys think. I know this is quite a long video. I just kind of wanted a little rant about it and see what you guys think as well. But I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about. I will, you know, make some more kind of videos, and whenever a Pokemon game is announced, I'll start covering it straight away. But I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Leave a like if you thought kind of the same about my points, or maybe if you thought differently, leave a comment. If you want more videos like this, just subscribe. Kind of growing as a channel now. We started 2 months ago, so that's why we haven't got as many subscribers, you know, as you might think. But we've done quite well. I'm happy with it so far. But yeah, you know, thanks to you guys, you know, with the support. It's been incredible so far. We've kind of grown faster than I thought. I kind of wanted 100 subscribers by the end of the year, and we've already got, you know, over half of that, which is brilliant. So just keep it up, guys. You're doing amazing. Anyway, I won't keep you any longer. Have an awesome day, guys, and I'll see you next time.